4 things to do when visiting Krakow, Poland. 1. Salt mines in Wieliczka Saltworks Castle. 2. Auschwitz, Nazi concentration and extermination camp. 3. Bus tours in Krakow. 4. City of Krakow. Now, let's take a look at each one, and I hope you enjoy my trip to Krakow, Poland. The Wieliczka and Bochnia salt mines and the Wieliczka Saltworks Castle in Poland. The Wieliczka and Bochnia salt mines and the Wieliczka Saltworks Castle in Poland are significant historical sites located in southern Poland, deeply linked to the country's mining heritage. These places are part of Poland's rich history of salt extraction, which goes back centuries. The Wieliczka salt mine is one of the oldest and most famous salt mines in the world. It is located in the town of Wieliczka, about 15 kilometers southeast of Krakow. The mine is part of the UNESCO World Heritage List and is one of the largest and most well-preserved underground complexes in the world. The salt mine has been in operation since the 13th century, making it over 700 years old. It was continually mined until 1996, and throughout this time, it produced vast quantities of salt. In the Middle Ages, salt was known as white gold due to its value and importance in preserving food. Visitors to the mine can explore over 287 kilometers of tunnels and over 2,000 chambers. Some of the most famous underground attractions include the Chapel of St. Kinga, a stunning underground chapel, entirely carved out of salt, complete with sculptures, chandeliers, and an altar. It's one of the most spectacular parts of the mine. The Museum of Mining, an informative exhibit showcasing the history of salt extraction and the development of mining technology. Salt lakes. There are several salt lakes located within the mine, adding to its beauty and mystique. The Miner's Route, a more immersive experience, where visitors can try their hand at traditional mining techniques and learn about the daily life of miners. Bochnia Salt Mine. The Bochnia Salt Mine, located in the town of Bochnia, about 30 kilometers east of Wieliczka, is another UNESCO-listed site and one of the oldest salt mines in Europe. Its history dates back to the 13th century, and like Wieliczka, it was an essential source of salt for centuries. Bochnia was a major salt producer for many centuries, with mining operations continuing until 1990. The mine also played a strategic role during various wars, including the Polish-Soviet War. Bochnia is slightly less crowded than Wieliczka but equally fascinating. Visitors can explore over 4 kilometers of underground corridors. The underground museum displays old mining tools, equipment, and exhibits related to the mine's history. One of the unique features of the Bochnia mine is its underground transport system, where visitors can take a ride on an old tram through the tunnels. The mine also has several underground chapels and a special saltwater lake that creates a surreal atmosphere in the dark, quiet chambers. Just like Wieliczka, Bochnia is known for its microclimate, which is said to have therapeutic effects, especially for those with respiratory problems. Some visitors come here for salt therapy. The Wieliczka Saltworks Castle is a historic fortress located in Wieliczka, near the salt mine. The castle dates back to the 16th century and was built as a defensive structure to protect the salt mines, which were an essential resource at the time. Over the years, it has undergone various modifications. The castle was originally constructed as a fortified residence for the owners and operators of the salt mines. Its role in protecting the valuable salt deposits was crucial. Later, it became a place for the administrative center of the mine, with the owners and directors of the mine living there. The castle is built in a Renaissance style and has a simple, yet elegant design. Today, the castle is a museum, offering exhibits related to the history of salt mining, regional history, and the Wieliczka area. The castle grounds also include beautiful gardens that are open to the public, providing a peaceful place for visitors to relax. The castle serves not only as a museum, but also hosts cultural events, educational programs, and temporary exhibitions. It offers a fascinating glimpse into the past, especially in relation to how the salt mining industry shaped the region. Salt was once one of the most important commodities in Europe, and these mines played a crucial role in Poland's economy for centuries. In fact, Wieliczka and Bochnia were integral to the country's financial stability, and many generations of miners worked in these subterranean passages. The mines also have strong cultural significance. Over the years, many miners created beautiful art, from sculptures to religious works, inside the mines themselves. The Chapel of St. Kinga at Wieliczka, for example, is a prime example of the creative and spiritual life of miners. Some mines even have small underground theaters, where performances and concerts are held to this day. Wieliczka is one of the most visited tourist attractions in Poland, so it can get crowded, especially during peak tourist seasons. The best way to explore is by taking a guided tour, as this helps visitors understand the historical and technical aspects of the mine. Bochnia is quieter and might appeal to those looking for a less touristy experience, but still offers a fascinating tour. Both locations have shops, restaurants, and facilities that make them comfortable for tourists, and the nearby towns of Wieliczka and Bochnia offer additional accommodations. Visiting both the Wieliczka and Bochnia salt mines gives you a comprehensive view of Poland's long history of salt mining and its cultural significance, while the Wieliczka Saltworks Castle provides an architectural and historical insight into the importance of salt to the region.
zadevali, tako da zdaj vse skupaj kar lepše.
Warsaw, Poland, is a beautiful city with a rich history, and taking a bus tour is one of the most convenient ways to explore it. There are several types of bus tours you can take in Warsaw, ranging from hop-on hop-off tours to more specialized, guided excursions. Here's an overview of what you can expect. Hop-on hop-off bus tours. These tours are perfect for those who want the flexibility to explore the city at their own pace. Typically, they cover all the major attractions in Warsaw, and you can get off at any stop to explore a particular area before catching another bus to continue the tour. Main stops on hop-on hop-off tours: Old Town, Stare Miasto, a UNESCO World Heritage Site with cobblestone streets, colorful buildings, and historical landmarks. Royal Castle, a beautiful palace that was the residence of Polish kings. Łazienki Park, a stunning park with a palace on the water and peacocks walking freely. Palace of Culture and Science, a massive Stalinist skyscraper, a symbol of Warsaw. Wieliczka Palace, a Baroque-style palace and one of the most beautiful in Poland. Warsaw Uprising Museum, a tribute to the 1944 Warsaw Uprising, offering a deep dive into Poland's WWII history. Guided bus tours provide an in-depth look at Warsaw's history, culture, and landmarks. These tours are led by knowledgeable guides who share fascinating stories about the city. Some of these tours might focus on specific themes, like Warsaw's Jewish history, WWII, or communist-era architecture. Warsaw Historical Tour, a comprehensive tour of the city's most significant historical sites, including the Old Town, Royal Route, and the Palace of Culture. Jewish Warsaw Tour, a deep dive into the city's Jewish history, including visits to the Warsaw Ghetto Memorial and the Nazik Synagogue. WWII and Uprising Tour focuses on Warsaw's experiences during WWII and the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. If you prefer to explore on your own, many buses come with audio guides in multiple languages, providing information about the places you pass. These tours allow you to sit back and enjoy the scenery while learning about the city's history and landmarks. Some tour operators also offer night bus tours, which give you a chance to see the city illuminated and explore Warsaw's vibrant night scene, including its cultural hotspots, bars, and restaurants. It's a great way to see the city in a different light. If you prefer a more personalized experience, you can book a private bus tour. This can be tailored to your interests, whether you're a history buff, an art lover, or just want to see the most picturesque spots in Warsaw. Best time to visit. Spring and summer are ideal for bus tours in Warsaw, as the weather is pleasant and you can enjoy the outdoor attractions like Łazienki Park. However, autumn is also beautiful, with fall colors in the parks.
Obrat, spravi, tobačno industrijo, tudi zaposluje preko 3000 delavcev, spravi je ta predel Nove Hute še danes tako gospodarsko kar pomemben, ampak primerljivo, ne primerljivo s temi številkami zaposlenih v času bivšega režima. Je pa zanimivo tudi to, ko so postavili ta ogromen jeklarski obrat, so potem že kmalu videli, da najbolj racionalna odločitev to ni bila, ker samini Krakova, ne, ki je vezana na plemstvo, na poljske kralje, ne, potem na te meščanske družine. Ne. In zanimivo tudi arhitekturno so se dosili takšnega projekta, da so pokombinirali stare srednjeveške sloje z slogom realsocializma. To je zanimivo videti, ne, pa niso bili to vse slabi projekti. Ne. Skratka, ljudem so želeli dati vedeti, da oni zdaj po drugi vojni gradijo nekaj novega, da stari Krakow je ena preteklost, ne, da oni se morajo zbolj ozbirati v prihodnost, ponudili so delovna mesta, ljudje odkot so prihajali seveda iz teh ruralnih delov podeželja, velike bloke, v mestu je bilo ta sosedska tako zelo odprta, nekaj podobnega, ki ste videli v Lodžu, te bulvarske razsežnosti, ampak to je tipika realsocializma, ne, in nasploh tako avtoritarnih in totalitarnih režimov, ta odprtost, ne, zaradi večje kontrole, ne, to je pomembno povedati, ne, spravi, vse je pod nadzorom, ne, težko se je kam, bi rekli, skriti, ne, potem ti prostori večjih trgov so za razne zborovanja, ne, za te manifestacije in podobno. Tako je izgledala ta nova huta, danes izgleda sosedska kar žalostno, ker tam je v glavnem ostalo starejše prebivalstvo, tako da za časa socializma je to vsaj do tistega kriznega obdobja, ki se je začelo konec 70-ih let, je izgledalo vse skupaj kar zelo zanimivo, zelo urejeno je bilo, ne, tako da je to tudi en pomemben del zgodovine Krakova. In se pravi, te relacije, ne, vzpostavitev nečesa novega naspram staremu Krakovu, ne, želeli so to doseči na koncu in seveda ni uspelo, ne, staro mesto je le staro mesto, to je neka oprijemljiva zgodovina, ne, eno od veličasti te kulturne dediščine in skozi katere smo hodili. Spravi v enoti 1, da vidite pograde.
Auschwitz. Auschwitz was one of the largest and most notorious Nazi concentration and extermination camps during World War II. It is located in southern Poland, near the town of Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is about 50 kilometers, 31 miles west of Krakow. The camp complex was established by Nazi Germany in 1940 and remained operational until 1945. It became the site of mass murder and extreme human suffering. Auschwitz was not a single camp but a complex of 3 major camps. Auschwitz I, the main camp, established in 1940, it originally housed Polish political prisoners. Over time, it expanded to hold Jews, Soviet POWs, Romani people, and others. It became infamous for its brutal conditions and use of gas chambers for executions. Auschwitz-Birkenau. This was the largest of the 3 and the main site for the mass extermination of Jews and other victims. Built in 1941-1942, Birkenau had multiple gas chambers and crematoria. It is where most of the murders took place, primarily through the use of Zyklon B gas. Auschwitz III Monowitz, also known as the Buna camp. This subcamp was established in 1942 to supply forced labor for the nearby IG Farben factory, which produced synthetic rubber and fuel for the Nazi war effort. Auschwitz was primarily a death camp for Jews, but it also targeted many other groups, including Jews. The camp was a central component of the Nazis' final solution, the plan to exterminate the Jewish population of Europe. About 1.1 million Jews were killed at Auschwitz, most of them in Birkenau. Poles. Many Polish citizens, including intellectuals, political leaders, and resistance members, were imprisoned and killed at Auschwitz. Roma, Gypsies. Tens of thousands of Romani people were murdered in Auschwitz as part of the Nazi policy of racial extermination. Soviet POWs. Thousands of Soviet prisoners of war were sent to Auschwitz, where they faced horrific conditions and mass executions. Disabled people. The Nazis also targeted the disabled, many of whom were sent to Auschwitz under the so-called euthanasia program. Others. Political dissidents, LGBTQ+ individuals, and anyone deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime were also victims of the camp. The primary method of mass murder at Auschwitz was gassing. Victims were often told they were going for a shower and then locked in gas chambers, where they were killed with Zyklon B gas. Afterward, the bodies were cremated in large furnaces. Shootings. Many prisoners were executed by gunfire. Medical experiments. Some prisoners were subjected to brutal medical experiments, often without any anesthesia. These experiments were performed by Nazi doctors, including Joseph Mengele, who became notorious for his cruel and inhumane practices. Starvation and forced labor. Prisoners were often worked to death in the camp's factories, or subjected to extreme hunger, disease, and physical abuse. Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviet Red Army on January 27, 1945. By that time, the Nazis had already begun to evacuate the camp and destroy evidence of the atrocities. Over 7,000 prisoners were still found at Auschwitz upon liberation, but many had already perished from starvation, disease, or abuse. After the war, Auschwitz became a symbol of the horrors of the Holocaust and Nazi genocide. The site was preserved as a museum and memorial in 1947 and now serves as a place of education, remembrance, and reflection. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and draws millions of visitors each year who come to learn about the atrocities committed there. Auschwitz stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked hatred, racism, and totalitarianism, and it remains one of the most important sites of memory for the Holocaust. The International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th, the date of Auschwitz's liberation, serves as a reminder of the atrocities and the need to prevent such horrors from happening again.
For all my friends there, thank you very much for supporting me. And if you want, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, okay? See you in my next content.
Krakow. Krakow is one of Poland's most historic and culturally rich cities. Situated in southern Poland, on the Vistula River. It's the second largest city in Poland, after Warsaw. Former capital of Poland until the 16th century, when Warsaw took over. Known as the Royal City, home to Polish kings for centuries. During World War II, Krakow was occupied by Nazi Germany, and nearby Auschwitz-Birkenau, about 1 hour away, remains a major site of remembrance. Its old town and wall castle are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Main Market Square, Rynek Główny, the largest medieval square in Europe, with St. Mary's Basilica and the Cloth Hall, Sukiennis. wall castle and cathedral, symbol of Polish royalty and national pride. Kazimierz district, historically the Jewish quarter, today a lively area with cafes, synagogues, and cultural festivals. Schindler's Factory Museum tells the story of Oskar Schindler and Krakow during WW2. A hub for art, theater, and music. Annual events include the Krakow Film Festival, Jewish Culture Festival, and Christmas markets. Known for legends like the Wild Dragon, Smock Kowalski. The historic core, Old Town, Wall, Kazimierz, is medieval and Renaissance in style, full of cobblestone streets, churches, and museums. The newer districts, like Nowa Huta, reflect 20th century socialist architecture, built as a model workers' city under communism. Modern Krakow also has business centers, shopping malls, and a buzzing cafe and nightlife culture. Plenty Park, a green belt around the old town, perfect for walking. Krakow's Mound and Kosciuszko Mound. Great viewpoints over the city. Close to nature, you can reach the Tatra Mountains or Okał National Park in a short trip. Rynek Główny, Main Market Square, the largest medieval square in Europe. St. Mary's Basilica, don't miss the hourly trumpet call from the tower. The Cloth Hall, Sukiennis, for souvenirs and local crafts. Oskar Schindler's Factory Museum, book tickets in advance. Walk through Pogors, where the Krakow ghetto once stood. Day trip ideas, if you extend your stay. Auschwitz-Birkenau, 1 hour away, Memorial and Museum. Wieliczka Salt Mine, UNESCO site, 30 minutes away. Zakopane in the Tatra Mountains, 2 hours away. Best time to visit, spring, April, June, and autumn, September, Oct, for mild weather and fewer crowds.
For all my friends there, thank you very much for supporting me. And if you want, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Okay? See you in my next content.